nerds, what's up? This month is self-published fantasy month, so I chose 3 indie books to read and rate. See you after the jump. So if you didn't know, September is self-published fantasy month, where you get to support indie authors who publish books on their own dime, and these are pretty cool. People really sacrifice to make their dreams come true, so I think it's great, and I just kind of searched through a list of ones that I had seen on Reddit and chose 3 that sounded interesting to me. So let's get into it, and I will tell you my ratings. The first book I chose to read was Mid-Lich Crisis by Steve Thomas, and I read this one on Kindle Unlimited. I just couldn't help picking this one up. It just had such a ridiculous title. I had to give it a chance. I really appreciated how gutsy that title was for a fantasy. And as I read it, to me, it seemed like the author was trying to go for a Terry Pratchett feel to satirize the fantasy genre and also, things about the world around us. So I thought that was a pretty big and ambitious goal that he was starting out as an indie writer to do. And overall, I enjoyed the book. I give this book a 3 out of 5 stars. Some of the good parts, he had this plot about basically an evil lich who was afraid of being called the E word. He didn't want to be evil even though he was. And it maybe doesn't sound funny when I explain it that way, but it was a really funny concept and I was super into it. And I really liked the idea of him exploring someone who's done all these evil things who doesn't want to be seen as evil. Like, I think that was a really good thing to satirize both in the fantasy genre and also just in life. I think where this book lost its way a little bit is that its scope was too broad. So he satirized like politics and sports and food and music. And all of them were pretty funny, but because the book was so short, none of them were really explored deeply. And so it was all just kind of shallow, surface level jokes. And I feel like when you're going to do a book like this, you really want to pick like 1 or 2 topics and dive deep to really get like the satire there. And so that kind of failed a little bit for me. Additionally, some of his characters were a little inconsistent, which may seem a weird thing to say about a book that's supposed to be funny. But I think when you're basing a book on this sort of thing, when you're trying to make it funny and be a satire, you really need to nail those things down. So that kind of is where it fell short for me. But a lot of the ideas were very funny. I laughed, and none of the jokes were awkward, which I feel like is actually a pretty big get in a book like this. Like, I feel awkward very easily. So the fact that I can say like nothing just totally fell flat, I think is like a big thing. So yeah, 3 out of 5 stars for me. There was just not quite enough there. It was pretty ambitious. I will say I was impressed that it was pretty well edited. I only found 1 mistake, which is what I usually find in normal published books. So I think that was really good. I think that professionalism is important. I would be really interested to see where this author is in another 5 or 6 books. I think he has a ton of promise, and I'm interested in that. So if you're a Terry Pratchett fan and you want to support a self-published author, I'd give Mid-Lich Crisis a try. It was pretty funny. The second book I read was Never Die by Rob J. Hayes. And I chose this book because I'm always really interested in Asian-based fantasies. I've read a decent amount, and they always just kind of hit a spot for me. So when I found out that this was that, I decided I'd give it a try. This book was a 4 out of 5 stars for me. What it nails is the ending. So many books fall apart in the ending, and I kind of expect self-published books to do that, but this ending was just so unexpected. It literally blew my mind. I was reading it in the same room as my husband, and I actually exclaimed out loud because I was just like so surprised. I don't want to say anything more because I don't want to ruin it, but it was really good. Like, A++ ending. I was so impressed. Overall, I really enjoyed the book. The couple of things that took a star away from me is, 1, it was riddled with errors, and there's just something about professionalism when you're putting a book out, and it was just like error after error after error. I really didn't feel like it had been copy edited, or maybe it only been copy edited once and they hadn't gone back. So I really recommend that the author does that because it does kind of hurt the readability. Obviously, ideas are more important, so I didn't take off a star for that, but it was something I noticed. Plot-wise, it was a little repetitive, and what I felt like would have been perfect is if 50 pages had been cut from this book and it had been a novella. I feel like this would have just been a killer novella, like 5 out of 5 stars, because just that extra little fluff that really just wasn't needed. It was like just a little too repetitive. Like, there wasn't enough plot for an entire book. But overall, I really recommend reading this. I also loved the characters. I really connected with them. And cared about them, which is another big task. So certainly interested in reading more books by him. I think he's really great, and I would check him out. 4 out of 5 stars. The third book I picked up was The Thief Who Pulled on Trouble's Braids by Michael McClung. Now I think this is the book that they like sponsored for the self-published fantasy month or whatever. It's like the read along and everyone's supposed to read it. I think it won, yeah, it was the first SBFBO winner. If you don't know, that's a Reddit thing where they vote on self-published fantasy. Mark Lawrence does it. And so I was interested. That's basically why I picked this one up. I will say this book was the most professional out of all three. Like, if you had given me the three, I think I would have guessed the other two were self-published. This one, I would not have guessed. It was clearly very edited and it had gone through a lot of people. And I know that seems silly, but that was a big deal to me. I give this book a 3.5 out of 5 stars, pushing on 4. It was just maybe not my kind of fantasy. Like, I think it's a very well-written book, and I'm not surprised so many people love it, so I don't want to discourage people from reading it. It just didn't really hit that spot for me. I think we all have personal likes and dislikes. The main character was a girl, and she was just like kind of that typical, like, small, really sneaky thief who is bad A and doesn't have any friends, and it's just like I read that character a lot. So it just was a little boring to me, but I liked her. I liked his characters. They were fine. My favorite part was actually this weird kind of creepy hell house part, which usually I don't like gritty fantasy, but it was so well written. I really applaud the author. I kind of wish that scene had gone up further. It really creeped me out, and I usually don't get strong emotional reactions to books like that, and so I was really impressed with that. I think it was a really good scene. Also, it was just kind of backloaded. Like, all the stuff that really interested me about this book, like all of this fantasy world building, happened in the very last part of the book, and it was just so fast. And it was like, oh no, wait, like I almost wanted this book to be longer. Like, explain that a little more, give me some more depth to that. And instead, there was just this giant appendix with a bunch of world building dumping. And I know that's a popular thing in books, but it's usually in books that are much longer, and it's not so much new information as just reminding you of old information you might have missed. Whereas this appendix felt like a lot of world building because he didn't find places to do it in the actual book. So that kind of seemed strange to me, and I didn't like consuming it that way. Overall, if you kind of like books that are, you know, about thieves and heist stories and mysteries, you would really enjoy it. So I don't want to put you off of it. It just kind of wasn't my cup of tea, but it was very well written and very well done. So definitely solid 3.5 out of 5 stars for me. So I hope you pick up one of these books or go and look for other self-published books. I bought these all off Amazon. You can read them on Kindle Unlimited usually. There's also audiobooks versions. I think it's really awesome to give back and try to support indie authors. It's really awesome that we have so many opportunities these days to put out our own work in the world without having to find publishers or do it in a traditional way, and I like to support that. I personally know an indie author, and he always says it means so much to him when people read his book and rate it. So I would really encourage you to go try to find those books and give them a rating. Go and write for them and try to advertise for them. You know, they have to pay for it all on their own. So I'm definitely gonna go rate these books. I really enjoyed actually all 3 of them. I would say you couldn't go wrong picking them up, even though my ratings varied on them. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you read any indie books and which ones were your favorite. I want to go check them out. Since it is the whole month of September, I'd hope to pick up some more. And if you like this video, please comment, like, and subscribe. And if you want to see what I'm currently reading, you can follow me on Instagram at bookborn.reviews. I will see you next time. Bye.